Welcome to the Today Dreamer podcast, my friend. I feel really blessed, and there's a sincere space of gratitude that I wanted to share with you. Thank you for taking a moment to engage in the here and the now with the show. The Today Dreamer project, which includes this podcast and YouTube channel, is here to help you cultivate your practice of presence. And there's a hope that, that may help you more deeply and more fully contribute to the blossoming of the emergent world story as it continues to unfold, and to participate in that process, whether that's by being of service in some way, or by making a contribution in some way, or just kind of adding your own unique genius into the mix. So this platform and this whole project is here to help you develop a deeper sense of presence, so that that state of being will filter into however you move into that emergent space. Today's guest is Rohan Sacre. I'll tell you a little bit about Ro before we get into the show. He's a musician that goes by the artist name Shadow Creature. He's a sacred space holder working with the plant medicine ayahuasca. He's a loving father and a dear friend of mine. We actually met at a kindness community kitchen in the mountains, and we realized that our shared values and perspectives really ignited something true in conversational space. And after having experienced the wonders of Ro's work, I wanted to share some of that through his new album Entheogenesis on the show. So this is a collaboration, and there's an open invitation, a gentle open one, to embrace this journey that we're about to go on together. So not only see it as a podcast, but see it as almost like a guided meditative podcast, where there's a chance to really feel into whatever emotions emerge in the present moment, and whatever experiences might come to the fore, and really just be with them, breathe into them, and allow them to move through you and flourish. So here's my conversation with Ro. If you haven't had a chance yet, please head over to todaydreamer.com, check out some more episodes. Feel free to get in touch with me with any feedback, or just to say hello. I'd love to hear from you and connect more deeply with you. And I hope you love it, and I hope you really get something meaningful out of this journey.
One of the, foundations of creativity or creation, or being an artist, and I guess we all are in that regard, because we're constantly perceiving, various things in various senses and dimensions, and like any good piece of art, it hopefully is up for some kind of, personal interpretation and inspiration. And I think this is like how I'm trying to live my reality more and more these days, is to view myself as a creator, and creating experiences where I can that will hopefully give way to inspire something or move something in someone else. And it doesn't have to be defined or decided what that meaning is. I think that's the beauty of it, is we can all celebrate drawing different different perception and different values out of singular objects or experiences. It's beautiful. That's where things become infinite, really.
So was that an intention of yours when you were creating the album, or when you were creating that artwork for the cover?
Yeah, the cover artwork. So yeah, for the album was more of a gift, I suppose, that was bestowed upon me through various experiences. It wasn't so much something that I was setting out to do. So I guess how the music came through was a different experience. But to figure out the concept of the cover, to try and represent this musical project, and the music is a journey. There's really no consistency as far as the musicology goes. It's a ride. It's a journey through different soundscapes and kind of different genres and themes. So to try and kind of unify that under an image felt like it was going to be hard, but then I just stopped thinking and then just like felt into kind of, what the album represented to me. And like I was saying earlier, it was the album is this concept or this expression of spiritual awakening, and as many aspects as I could genuinely and authentically bring through. And so there's light, there's beauty, there's terror, there's darkness, there's shadow. It's kind of a lot of the many aspects I think that we all go through on that journey. So I guess polarity was this thing, this energy that was coming through from the music. So when looking at what I could represent in trying to capture that in a cover, I wanted to go for polarity, but then something that was still vague and open to interpretation. So yeah, the image could look like a moon, or it could look like the sun, and it could look like dusk, could look like dawn. It looks like the indigenous flag, or it doesn't. So it's kind of I just want it to feel more than anything, to hopefully create a feeling in the person to identify with whatever aspect they do. So sometimes, depending on the song I'm listening to, it'll feel like a nice warm sunset. And then other tracks, it feels, like the breaking morning coming through after a really long, horrendous night. So,
Yeah.
that's about as much, I think, and the rest was just feeling it, I love drawing and art. So I just, it's not a process that I think much about. I go for my aesthetics and colors and things that feel good,
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. There's this open invitation for everyone listening and even with us to be able to kind of sink into that space of feeling and allow allow this kind of present moment to wash over us, and allow the music that we're about to explore and this kind of journey into presence to do the same. I'm wondering if, whether, you mentioned going through and listening back to some of the tracks and them having different things kind of arise within your being through that process. I'm wondering if you had done that on multiple occasions, and whether or not different things have arisen from the same song, depending on where you were when you were listening.
Yeah, that's a great great question and thought to pause on. I think what I'm finding with this particular group of tracks in this album is it is an evolution. And each time I listened, I've obviously listened to these tracks a lot in the production phase and post-production, and not so much recently, because this has been a project that I've been working on for years, and I'm only just kind of getting ready to release publicly. So I've had a lot of time with it, but yeah, it seems to reflect differently depending on where I'm at. And I suppose the original incarnation of whatever energy was happening through me at the time of creating some of the tracks, because that was a process that I may have grown more since or healed. It's, some of them feel like kind of postcards from an echo of myself, or others still really hit hard. There's a particular song in there which was it was a struggle to write, and it was at a time where I was really going through some darkness, and not very well, I guess, emotionally and mentally, and not coping. And this was amongst the process of this artistic venture and life. And it was, I guess at the time I was quite suicidal, and it was a big part of my psyche was constantly thinking about, not being able to kind of keep my head above water and cope and continue in this reality. And it was pretty dense, as such things are. But I found the process of this song that emerged through that particular feeling was just incredibly cathartic at the time. And essentially, when I finished the song, more or less, I found that feeling dramatically subsided, and I really realized the power of this process of like being able to be present in an emotion or in an experience that we're perceiving of ourselves, of the world around us, and giving it some space. So in this case, it got a song, this feeling, this energy, to release it, and that's exactly what it did. So now if I listen back to that track in particular, I can appreciate it more artistically, and it can be a bit painful, but it's more like I because I've overcome that aspect of that time. It feels more triumphant and less disparity in the music. So that's an extreme case of one of the songs. But many of the others, they have different, I think different expressions that want to come through at different points. And I listen to some of them, in meditations or ceremonies to kind of just see how they're landing at different times. And they always seem to produce some kind of new space for me to explore, within myself, or just, this thing that's going on called life around us. So yeah, I'm hoping that these tracks are kind of somewhat eternal to some degree, or at least a couple of them. They feel like they've got the ability to at least stick around a while. So yeah.
Would we be able to maybe, I'm thinking as we're going through this journey, maybe it'd be nice to kind of just celebrate all the different shades of the spectrum, and open up to that experience and see what, there's an open invitation to see what comes up now, maybe for you in this current moment, and for everyone else listening, and everyone that's here with us now. So do you like to maybe go into a meditation with that track you mentioned? I thought it might be kind of a nice idea, because I'm very curious myself now. And maybe beginning on the deep end mightn't be such a bad idea.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. All right.
So I'll invite everyone to, maybe just to take a couple of nice deep inhalations at your own pace, in your own time, and allow them to kind of come into your being in a really gradual and effortless way. And at the peak of these breaths, you might like to just pause for a moment. Just notice the subtleties of the space as it continues to unfold and change, before releasing just as gracefully on the way out. And you might like to continue this process throughout this piece of music with your eyes closed, and see what comes up for you, realizing that you're in a safe space, and everything is welcome here.
pretty intense way to open the album. Yeah. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
So where are we right now? We're like trying to just kind of find some ground and wondering how you're feeling in this moment and what's kind of alive for you amongst after that.
Well, I think for me that track really opens up this portal to death, and kind of what was behind it was me, I guess, expressing that act of consciously taking my own life instead of doing it sonically. So that is like the journey through the tunnel, but through that that form of embrace of death. So when I hear it now, it's very unsettling, and it reminds me of my sometimes my fears of the unknown, of the other side of this mortal coil. So yeah, I think I'm feeling electrified and quite reminded of the fragility and the beauty of the here and now with that, thankful to be here next to you doing this.
I'm very appreciative of that as well, and I could really feel into that space with you on that journey, and also at the same time it felt like a sense of knowing in my own way what that's like, and there seems to be a space in the middle that where I could where I met you during that experience, and even now more deeply because of that. It's an interesting thing to be able to relate with another from a space of familiarity, but then also not totally knowing exactly the kind of intricacies of their delicate experience, because it is quite nuanced and quite different and unique for all of us. But that common ground seems a beautiful place to sit and celebrate.
I think that's where the healing is really, I think we all have our differences and our unique, expression and perceptions, but I feel like as humanity, or as a humanity and community, is to we can celebrate each other's differences, but then hopefully find that common space together, that where our story exists and our song, and I believe thematically we all resonate with the themes of life and love and heartache and death and misery and suffering and beauty and all of it, and I think this is where music becomes such a beautiful language of expression of such humanity and emotion, and because through a piece of music we can identify some common aspect or a feeling, and that's becomes a key or an entry point to, I think, more connection to each other and to opening up that space of communal gathering and healing. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. I'm really glad that there was a point of connection within it, and I think this is what all music does, and in all of my musical ventures, particularly going forward, I'm far more conscious of it, wanting to create a connection point within these frequencies that will hopefully be identifiable and relatable on some level, and then hopefully new and groundbreaking in others, and and in that sense be a medicinal experience. So it's always for a point, not reckless ear bashing with crude frequencies.
I wonder if a thought that just came up for me as you were sharing just then was, I wonder if there's kind of music playing throughout our lives all the time. And there's something around the attunement to be able to presence in and listen to that music. And then through the creation, it's almost like that is almost like a translation of what's already going on, but with some sense of potency or like a focused beam of energy, and something that that kind of remains as an imprint to be shared or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like this particular album was that experience. It was me touching and tapping into something that was already existing, and I was just trying to bring back a metaphoric representation, you know. So most of these tracks came from, you know, dreams or a ceremony, but you know, from a space of expanded awareness and presence, much like now. And with the mind being still, I was able to connect to other dimensions of, you know, sound and vibration and feeling. And so it's funny because with this album, like I don't really feel like I wrote it, you know, just like I was lucky enough to get to witness and experience it. And then this album is a very clumsy attempt, you know, or it's a metaphor, you know, to try and capture and retranslate, you know, like these things that pre-exist for sure, and whether they're aspects of me or you or all of us or something other. I think each song or each melody is different, and I do believe that we all have our own, and we have multiple, you know, kind of songs, but I feel like we do have our own kind of melody, and you know, we can really push into that space if we want to, and try and uncover what that might be, you know, what our kind of instrument is, and how that's going to, you know, add to this beautiful harmony of the symphony of creation. And you know,
yes,
it's all a harmonization. So yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the dreams and the ceremonies from which this arose that you kind of pointed to a little earlier. I'm very curious, especially around the dream.
Yeah, well, I think one track which would be a nice follow up, I think, a lot brighter, was I was going through a very intense, I guess, phase of doing some of these songs, and a lot of plant medicine ceremony and a lot of healing. So I was very, very much in this flow state of being, I guess, quite present to myself and my emotions and my expression. So I noticed that my dream states were just getting really vivid and quite musing, really. I'd always come up with, there'd be some message through my dreams, or you know, something important that felt really relevant to the time. And this particular, I remember I had this dream, and I was just transported to, like, you know, the peaks of the Himalayas, and just slowly this beautiful heavenly music was just like coming in on this gentle kind of crescendo, and one of my good friends was sitting on this little peak of the mountain with a harmonium, and just this like radiant golden light coming from him, and just this song just filled the space. It was just like this really transcendent and quite a trippy kind of dream, because I was just transported to this like weird dimension with my friend, just like banging out this heavenly tune, and it just felt so beautiful and innocent and pure. Just the whole scene and the feeling and the music. And I was lucky enough to kind of wake up within the dream and quickly get the melody down. So I think I spent like the next 3 hours awake just frantically trying to get, and it's a really simple song, but like I had to, like, you know, get everything as close as I could, you know, to what I was kind of feeling. And that was the thing. Like, this is probably the quickest song to write, maybe the most kind of like polished, but it just flowed so easily because it had written itself, you know, like it came from this dream. it felt really powerful. It felt really magical. So it's like I don't feel like I wrote this, like once again, there's no like ownership of this track. And because I didn't really know where to place it, because it was such an odd one that kind of just intersected in that space of I guess astral dreaming, I decided that I'd put it right in the center of the album. Like that's where it fit, because it was like a bridge between the worlds of this reality and the other stuff, I guess the more shadowy and darker aspects of the album. So it kind of, I think it's a beautiful bridge between the beginning of the album, which opens up a little more kind of gentle and light and starts walking you down the line into the realms of the dark night of the soul, which is the back half of the album. So I've called it's got a, I didn't have a name for it, so I'm like, well, it's like an intermission. It's a bit of a kind of breather track. So I've called it the interdimensional mission, the intermission of the interdimensional. So yeah, I'd love to share this because it's a really, it's one of my happy places. So. Made me laugh just rehearing that and reflecting on the dream, because I forgot to mention that a key component was my friend was not just playing the harmonium, he was beatboxing. And that was my first attempt in that track to do some kind of vocalizations and no percussion. It was all mouth made percussion. So having a little laugh remembering that, but it reminds me of, like, for my work, generally it's rhythm's really important. So I'm a percussionist, and I've been a drummer most of my life, and I've always found that connection to rhythm and to beat has been essential for, I guess, induction of trance-like states, or channeling, or just connecting to yourself like in a really deep way and letting the mind go. I think the beauty of rhythm, particularly if it's non-melodic and it's just, simple beat work, for people that may be listening, that might be, wanting to get in touch with aspects of themselves. Just rhythm is a really great way to start. It's an easy thing to just slip out of the mind and just let the body do its thing and find its own pace and, flow. And without the distraction of, notes to remember or to play. And it's a really beautiful entry point, I think, to our own personal song and musicology. So a lot of the work I do these days, particularly, in ceremony or with people, rhythm's a really important part of, playing live instrumentation and just being able to flow in that, in that beautiful space. So, yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about, the rhythm of your ceremonies, if you want to, if I want to frame it that way, and
Yep.
kind of, like what comes up for you when I just throw that out there?
I think for me, rhythm of the ceremonies more and more as I guess mature and grow in sharing spaces with people and, co-creating. The music is obviously such a strong part of the journeying, as is silence when we have that. But I'm really trying my best these days to have as much expression around me as I possibly can. So if I'm feeling inspired to play, in a live sense, I've got some tools for the trade. So, I've got my didgeridoos and some flutes and a drum, and I'm just constantly acquiring kind of instruments, because I really love just kind of being able to jam, in those spaces, or just to let that creativity and that inspiration kind of just come through me. And it obviously takes a little bit of familiarity with your instruments to be able to flow really well. But I don't often practice or play any of my instruments these days, before ceremony. I hope to kind of just find a rhythm that'll come through, or a song, much like this album, just the same kind of process, just sitting and waiting, and if it's going to be a valuable part of the ceremony, I get a pretty strong impression, and then I'll just kind of step into that space and into the performance aspect. And I try and resist as much as I can, because I'm really big on not interjecting too much into people's experience, and I don't want to, become too much of a space. So it's more resisting the urge and the compulsion to act until I really feel like I have to, and I get that message that it's appropriate. And then I find that if I can do that, and I'm just in a flow state of expressing a rhythm or a melody or whatever on whichever instrument, or even with my voice potentially, it tends to be a part of the space and a part of people's experience that, seems to come across and land quite powerfully and be quite helpful. Often you'll see people's reactions can be anything from crying to singing along harmoniously to purging and really moving some stuck energy. So I guess that's more in the realms of shamanic music, I suppose, or the shamanic realms of using sound medicinally very intentionally, as opposed to just playing and performing pretty songs. But yeah, that space I can only really access when I'm really, my intention is to become an open space and channel for, music like that to come through. So it's less preconceived or contrived and more just flow state kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Which is, lots of fun, really. It's beautiful. It can be a little, it's a vulnerable space to be in. Especially like, you have an instrument in your lap or your hands or your mouth and you like have no idea what's about to come through and you're just like, all right,
What's the kind of the space we're in right now?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm kind of seeing what you're kind of sharing around the ceremony as being like an analogy for life, and the instruments as being parts of ourselves, and having those developed in certain, with a certain amount of practice allows us to then reach for them at times when we intuitively feel like they're in need, and maybe not before that time. There's this almost a sense of really checking in and saying, okay, this is the part of me that needs to come forth in this moment, and I'm going to honor that by moving with that river, and then transitioning and allowing that flow to take place within us. Yeah, is kind of what's coming through me in this moment with what you're sharing.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess the ceremonies for you seem like in itself one aspect of that practice, that, and I'm wondering now how you may bridge that into your life, and if you see the bridge, or if you've explored the bridge, and how how that process may have informed the way that you live.
Yeah, well, I guess that's the work, really, and that's a part of the integration end of any discipline or practice of spirituality or mindfulness and just being present. We can have these incredible experiences. So what? It's the if so what kind of question. I constantly have to remind myself, because it's a struggle for me as well, in the busyness of this time and space. So yeah, it's also a work in progress, like I'm sure it is for a lot of people. But I guess the fact that I have more points of reference, the more that I, have those experiences, the more I have to kind of lean on as a foundation to remember. It's all about remembering. So then when I'm in my everyday kind of scenario, hopefully I give myself the opportunity to remember that, hey, maybe there's another way to respond to this, or to, feel or say or not say. It's just kind of giving me more of that kind of present awareness. And I think it alters probably, maybe in aspects, my behaviors, but maybe not so much. It just helps me, I think, to align more with my truest form and self. And I think that's the space that I really want to be in as much as I possibly can. It's not kind of overrun by other things that aren't myself, the stress of the day, or fatigue, or pressures of everything that's going on. So yeah, I think it's always a work in progress, but I guess I'm blessed and fortunate to have this reference point of these amazing experiences where I get to really be myself fully and embody that. So I'm kind of, it's like I'm the instrument, I'm learning how to play myself. So I guess the more experience I get, the better I'm going to be at blowing my own trumpet,
Yeah.
or playing the fiddle. But yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm still like a entry level musician when it comes to myself and my own personal mastery, though. So
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Seems like it. Yeah, it's a healthy space to be in, this, this idea of plenty of room to grow, plenty of room to change, plenty of room to help, to serve. And to contribute that song, to explore that song, whatever that may be, and to get more proficient at that instrument and all the instruments of our being. Yeah.
And I think also the grace, like adding to that, is that we, nothing's permanent, and this is an evolution. This whole experience, we're growing, we're changing all the time, and there's something refreshing and graceful within knowing that and understanding that we constantly have the ability to change and to transform and to reinvent ourselves and the world around us. So we don't have to sit in anything for too long if it's not really serving us or anyone else. And I think that's another thing that there's plenty of things to look at and in despair and feel really negative about, but it's once again just perception. We can always look forward, and so it's like, yeah, I can always do better. I know that. Like, there's a billion things I could be doing better, but it's like, well, I can. That's what keeps me kind of motivated, is the optimism of knowing that the change is possible, and also just taking the pressure off, like in our own time when we're ready. Like you were saying a bit earlier, with those things will emerge when they're relevant, I guess.
It's interesting, this dance of pressure, because I feel like too much pressure off probably isn't really doesn't seem like the right ratio of ingredients in the recipe. But I feel like too much on is also quite a detrimental thing. So we're always kind of playing this game of balance, aren't we? Yeah. And even within the sensing of which instrument to pick up, or there's a delicate balance in everything, and just the whole idea of that, the reminder of that itself feels like it can take a little bit of pressure off in the more difficult ends of the spectrum, or knowing that if there's a little bit too much salt in that mixture, there might be some way to counterbalance it with a bit of sweetness.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. We've just got to. Life is challenging, and we don't need to make it harder on ourselves than it likely already is. I really think, like, that's my default. It's like going to the ease kind of end of the spectrum, because it's a tough gig. It's a crazy reality that we've signed up for, and that we're living in, and that we're doing together. So I think, like, it's just important to be really gentle and be in our own corner. Just be like, hey, like, tomorrow's a new day. But yeah, like, once again, if so what? So we've got to there has to be an action and a manifestation of these flighty thoughts, or these beautiful experiences. Otherwise they are meaningless. And I think it is that balance of, meaning becomes something when it's, kind of means something, and it can only mean something when it's a something, So, but yeah, it's that play, and a dance. And I often, trip myself up and fall over a lot. And that's also kind of funny as well. It's just, I try and really look at this experience as joyfully as possible these days, and just appreciate it for the gift that it is. And hard to do when you're having a really tough day, but I think overall, we just got to be, like, really, really gentle and self-caring. That's the only way for our I think gifts to really emerge, because a lot of those things are shy within us. They've been really disallowed to exist, whether that's from our families or friends or society, or just our own expectations of ourselves. So I guess if we're trying to find new territory within ourselves, then that has to be kind of gentle and timid, and to be able to meet these vulnerable spaces where I believe the true gifts are for all of us. That's where our song is, in that vulnerability and in that raw truth, in that authenticity. So all the pretenses have to dissolve. But yeah, for that to kind of have space, we have to be gentle and delicate and steady. So
yeah, definitely. It reminds me of this kind of attitude of meditation, where there's an invitation to be gentle with yourself throughout your practice, just to kind of return to that gentleness and kind of breathe into that space of taking care of oneself through the actual process that's unfolding. And I even noticed myself going to interesting spaces when we're listening to the first track, especially in terms of just watching where my mind was going, and returning back into the song itself and into that river of flow, and just kind of being gentle with the fact that I'd gone there, and it's kind of okay wherever we go. There seems to be this back and forth kind of like a cleansing process that takes place in life, and a deepening that also takes place through those difficult moments, and a breathing into in a form it seems to be a form of gentleness now that I think about it. Just the breath itself, just taking a deep inhalation in, is kind of a nice little way of taking care of yourself as you kind of move into something, rather than running away from it or covering it up or trying to kind of tighten.
Yeah, because that's just control. It's just ego, I think like we're better to just embrace how we are as we are there and then, in its entirety, because that's at least authentic and real, because anything else is just ego, control, projection, and fucking bullshit, really. So and that's not helpful. Like, none of it's helpful. So even with meditation, same with me. I'm just constantly, my head's swimming, and it's like, well, that's normal and that's fine, and I'm not going to sit here and judge myself about that. Like, otherwise I'm pretending to be something I'm currently not, and I'm currently finding it hard to stay focused. My priority is just authenticity as much as possible. As I grow, the more connection I have with myself and people around me, it feels like such important work to just come together and show up as truthfully and authentically as we can, and that includes, I guess, all of the funk and the good, the bad, the ugly. And meditation can be like one of those amazing trigger points for people where they feel like they're failing at it, like, oh, I can't even do that right. It's like, there's no right. Like, you do it, you're fine. Like, you're doing it. Like, the way you're doing it's fine.
A lot of people feel like that with life. I feel like that sometimes with life. This idea of, am I doing this right? Is this enough? I was exploring that today on the walk through the forest. Was like, what's actually enough? And maybe I'm already here, and it's like, I am already here, and this is enough, and this is kind of just right as it is for this moment, and the tension comes around trying to make it otherwise, or feeling like we need to.
Well, I think this is a real issue for lots of us that are privileged to exist in the Western model, but the curse of that is this like authoritative program or parasite that we have embedded in us, that it's like we're constantly looking or seeking permission, or we're rebelling, like we're the opposite. We're going to rebel against something, but it's like there's always the other or the something, and I feel like it's a real struggle for us to really take stock in ourselves and to really seat in our own sovereignty and understand that we are our own authority, and that's kind of like it. Like, we are accountable to ourselves first and foremost. And so many of us are not living in that frequency or that energy. It might be under the shadow of our parents or our partners or our work, or just our trauma, and I think that's really sad, and it's really holding back our evolution, humanity's evolution together, the way that we relate to our environment, to nature, to indigenous, to each other. Like, it's one of the, I think, the primary kind of drivers behind our sickness is this authority issue that we've got. We're not believing in ourselves or backing ourselves enough, and it's kind of horrible, like, because who are you living for then? What are you doing? Like, so it's an interesting thing, I think, that we all kind of wrestle with at times, and who's to say?
Okay, so we're going to go a little bit deeper together now and do a little bit of presencing into whatever arises together. And Rohan's going to do the same, just with an instrument and it's going to share kind of, whatever comes up for him on that instrument. And we're going to do exactly what we were doing earlier, or there's an invitation to anyways, in terms of just coming into this moment and breathing deeply into the space that's present for us. Yeah. So feel free to just close your eyes now and again start to kind of allow your breathing to just become a little bit slower, but maybe in a natural way. No need to force anything or make anything happen, or just allow for whatever's here in this moment to be as it is, as naturally and as effortlessly as possible. You might like to just notice your inhalations. Think to yourself, I am breathing in. And just notice how it feels to allow your breath to effortlessly almost drop or fall on its own. Just notice if anything's coming up for you in your body. You might feel some pain or even a sense of deep relaxation. It's an invitation to drop into the sensations of our bodies. As we continue to be with what is most alive for us, the here and the now. wherever you are. On your next exhalation, may be nice to carry through the energy of whatever it is you're feeling as you open your eyes. Thank you so much for tuning into part 1 of this beautiful journey into a deeper state of presence with Rohan Sacre as he shares his album Entheogenesis with us. If you'd like to go a little bit deeper and you're ready for more, there'll be part 2 that's out next week, and I'm so looking forward to sharing that with you and hearing feedback if you have any, which you can submit to me at todaydreamer.com. And also, if you're looking to go deeper on this journey of self-exploration in the hopes of meaningfully contributing or participating in the emergent world story and its blossoming, if you're looking to deepen your participation and self-inquiry, feel free to get in touch, as I'm taking on a small handful of participants to work one-on-one with me. And you can find out more by emailing me, michael@todaydreamer.com. But stay tuned to the next episode, and thank you again for sharing space with us in the here and the now.